Gary Holt submitted the job application on a Tuesday in March 2024. He was 58 years old, sitting at the same kitchen table where, 3 years earlier, he and Linda had opened a bottle of 2012 Napa Cabernet to celebrate. The job paid $19 an hour. The position was floor supervisor at a distribution center in Warren County, Ohio, 40 minutes from the house. He had earned $91,000 in his final year at the plant. At 3 years earlier, he and Linda had done everything right. They had a number, and the number felt like safety. The number was wrong, not in the way people expect, but in the way that takes 37 months to become clear. Gary had spent 26 years as plant manager at a mid-size manufacturing facility outside Dayton. He ran a department of 60 people. He knew how to read a balance sheet before most of his peers knew what one was. Linda had been a curriculum coordinator for the Dayton City School District for 18 years, an underfunded district. Too much paperwork. She retired the same week Gary did. They had planned it that way for longer than most people plan anything. Their combined 401k accounts held $612,000 at retirement. The house was paid off. Boo's Social Security deferred. Gary's projection showed $2,400 a month starting at 67. They had the math. The math looked solid. Gary had built the retirement model in a spreadsheet over 18 months. Annual expenses, $58,000. Withdrawal rate, 4.2%. He had checked it against 3 different retirement calculators online. All 3 said it was within range. The first year felt like a held breath finally released. Linda started a garden in the backyard. Gary drove to Michigan for 3 weeks to visit his brother. They went to Portugal in October. 8 days, $8,700. No regret. Their daughters were grown, 1 in Phoenix, 1 in Columbus. Grandchildren were arriving, 2 already. A 3rd announced that Christmas. The plan had never been only about money. It had been about time, and time had finally arrived. Yet there was one blind spot. Not greed, not recklessness. Something quieter. They had modeled retirement as a stable state, built their numbers on the assumption that the future would cooperate with the spreadsheet. It is a common assumption. Healthcare cost them $1,380 a month on an ACA marketplace plan, beginning in 2022. Gary had budgeted $900. The difference, $480 a month, with $5,700 a year, did not exist anywhere in the model. They adjusted their lifestyle. They did not adjust the model. If you want to see how a retirement built over 18 months of careful planning begins to come apart, here's what I ask. Subscribe. Drop a like if this one feels close. Tell us in the comments, did you ever do everything right and still get it wrong? Back to Gary and Linda. The spreadsheet wasn't wrong. Yet the spreadsheet just didn't know what was coming. In January 2022, the combined balance stood at $641,000. The markets had cooperated through their first full year out. Gary checked the number on the 15th of every month, the same ritual he had kept at the plant. By October 2022, it was $489,000. The S&P had fallen over 18% that year. Gary and Linda had continued drawing $4,800 a month through a year that had no visible floor. Gary ran the revised numbers in November. He sat at the kitchen table without speaking for a long time. Linda recognized the look. She had seen it twice before in their marriage, and both times it had meant something permanent. They cut where they could. Canceled the Portugal follow-up plan for 2023. Stopped a small monthly contribution to a joint brokerage account they had maintained out of habit. They told themselves the market would recover. It did recover, partially. By mid-2023, the balance had climbed back to $541,000. Gary updated the spreadsheet and added a new row: minimum viable balance to sustain the plan through age 80. The number he entered was $520,000. They were 57. Medicare was 8 years away. Social Security was 10 years away. The house was still paid off. Gary's model now showed the money running out at 79 under the current withdrawal rate. Linda suggested part-time work. Gary said not yet. He believed the recovery would continue. He believed their adjusted annual budget, $54,000 now, was sustainable. He had believed in well-built models his entire career. He kept believing. But the house needed a new roof in August 2023, $4,400, cash. The car needed a transmission in November, $2,800. These were not disasters. They were the ordinary costs of owning things over time, and they lived entirely outside the spreadsheet's projections. By January 2024, the balance was $403,000, but the withdrawal rate had crept to 6.1%. Gary had not updated that cell in the model. The original 4.2 was still sitting there in the column, unchanged. There is a version of this where they catch it earlier, where Gary opens the spreadsheet in spring 2023 and corrects the number. That version exists. This is not that story. Gary was not in denial. He was in a specific kind of hope, the kind that feels like patience but functions like delay. And from the inside, they are indistinguishable. EBRI data shows that roughly 40% of early retirees return to the workforce within 5 years. The most common reported reason is not emergency. It is miscalculation. Gary told Linda on a Sunday morning in February 2024. He had printed 2 pages from the spreadsheet and set them on the kitchen table between their coffee mugs. He said, "We need to look at the number." Linda studied the pages without speaking. She asked 2 questions. At the first, how long at current pace? Gary said 14 months, maybe 16 if they cut further. The second question she didn't say out loud. They talked for 3 hours. They did not raise their voices. Long marriages develop a particular kind of conversation, factual, efficient, with the weight distributed evenly across the words and the silences. By noon, a decision had been made. Linda called her former supervisor at the school district the following week, and a part-time opening, curriculum consultant, 20 hours a week, $34 an hour. She was offered the position the same day she called. Gary applied to 4 positions in operations and logistics. He received 1 callback, the floor supervisor role at the distribution center in Warren County, $19 an hour. He accepted without negotiating. He had earned $91,000 in his final year at the plant. The distance between that number and $19 an hour was not something Gary called a fall. He called it a reclassification, and he believed it, mostly. There is a silence that follows this kind of decision. Not relief, not grief. Something in between with no clean name. Gary sat in his car in the parking lot after signing the paperwork. He did not move for 11 minutes. Nobody puts that into a spreadsheet. Not the withdrawal rate, and not the healthcare premium adjustment. The 11 minutes in the parking lot after signing. That's the part nobody talks about. Linda started March 4th. Gary started the following Monday. Their combined income from work, approximately $67,000 annually. The monthly withdrawal from savings dropped from $4,800 to $800. The bleed had slowed. It had not stopped entirely. In April 2024, meant the account balance stood at $381,000, down from $612,000 at retirement. 37 months, $231,000. some taken by the market, the rest by the ordinary cost of being alive in America at this moment. The Portugal photographs were still on the living room shelf. Linda had framed 3 of them. Gary passed them every morning on the way to the kitchen, but he did not stop. He knew what they were. They did not sell the house. They did not take on debt. They did not ask their daughters for help. Every line in the plan had bent, but none had broken. Gary reminded himself of this. He was not wrong. Most people running the same numbers in 2021 would have made the same decision. The difference between Gary and Linda and most people is that Gary and Linda have already found out. Their evenings changed after March. A dinner was earlier. Weekends were quieter. The grandchildren still came. Columbus was manageable. Phoenix required a flight they were not booking right now. The garden still grew. The house was still theirs. As of mid-2024, Gary Holt works 5 days a week as shift supervisor at a distribution center in Warren County, Ohio. His shift begins at 6 in the morning. He is 58 years old. Linda Holt works 20 hours a week for the same school district she retired from. She has been offered a return to full-time employment. She has not given an answer. Gary updated the retirement model in June 2024. The new projection, steady income from both positions, reduced withdrawals, no major disruptions, shows them reaching Social Security age with roughly $330,000 remaining. Gary typed the word "assuming" and left it there. Well, they still have the house. Linda's garden came back this spring. She added a row of tomatoes. Gary built a raised bed frame from cedar planks on a Saturday morning. It took 3 hours. They have not talked about Portugal again. They have discussed a long weekend in Columbus in the fall to see the grandchildren. That trip is planned. It has not been booked. Gary turned 60 in November. Neither he nor Linda has decided what comes after Social Security eligibility becomes real. Yet the spreadsheet shows one version of that answer. Their lives, at this point, are showing them another. They retired at 55 because they had worked for it. The number said it was time. They had earned that in the plain and literal sense of the word, and they knew it. They went back at 58 because the number changed. One bad market year, healthcare above projection, a roof, a transmission, the ordinary costs of a life Gary's spreadsheet had not fully seen. A withdrawal rate that drifted, slowly, past the line he had drawn. Gary's model shows one set of numbers. What the numbers do not show is Linda's garden coming back this spring, or the cedar frame, or the photographs still on the shelf in the house that is still theirs. This wasn't the only time this happened. It made sense at the time.